Have you ever noticed how, the moment you begin to truly evolve, the world around you starts to shift? Not in support, but in subtle resistance. They won't confront you directly. No, they'll wrap it in laughter, passive remarks, or that telling silence when you speak of something real. It's not malice, it's fear, because your growth forces them to see what they've long ignored, their own stagnation. Your clarity becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready to look. Maybe you're in this exact place right now. You've begun questioning what once felt certain. You speak with more intention, think with more depth, and suddenly you're no longer one of them. You're met with confusion, distance, maybe even mockery. But the truth is this is the cost of inner strength, not surface-level toughness, not bravado, but the kind of strength that unnerves people, because it doesn't seek validation. It doesn't need applause. It simply is, and that's terrifying. To those still asleep, your awakening feels like an earthquake. Why? Because a self-possessed mind, one that questions, resists, sees, is a threat, not just to the system, not just to society, but to every false identity you once carried. Nature understood this long before we did. It doesn't reward comfort, it rewards courage. And when you begin to see through the illusions, when you let go of borrowed beliefs, you stop being manageable. You become dangerous. To the lies, to the noise, and to the weakness that thrives in groupthink. This video isn't comfort, it's confrontation. It's for the ones on the verge of rupture. Tired of wearing masks? Tired of being caged by fear? It's for you. The one who feels alone not because you're lost, but because you're awakening. This path won't be easy, but if you choose it, to build a mind that can't be broken, a will that won't submit, a truth that speaks even in silence, then know this: you'll never be the same again. Because as Nietzsche once showed us, the abyss isn't there to swallow you. It's there to reveal what you're truly made of. And when you stop running from it, when you dare to face the chaos within, you'll find something unshakable, a power that no one gave you, because it was always yours. Because for nature, transformation does not bloom in comfort. It doesn't grow in stillness, in ease, in tidy routines. It's born in disruption, in dissent, in moments when everything you thought you were begins to collapse. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." This isn't poetic. This is clinical. It means that if you want to evolve, truly evolve, you must first be undone. You must let go of the illusion that growth is gentle, that healing is soft, that strength comes wrapped in comfort or affirmation. Number, it comes in the fire. When you stop begging life to be merciful and start asking yourself to be resilient, think back. When did you truly change? Was it when everything was predictable, or when it all fell apart? The heartbreak, the failure, the betrayal, the nights you couldn't sleep and the mornings you didn't want to rise. That was your initiation. Jung understood that the darkness you avoid holds the very medicine you seek. He didn't glorify pain, but he refused to look away from it, because to him the shadow wasn't a flaw, it was a doorway. And if you can shift your relationship with suffering, if you can stop seeing it as punishment and start using it as a sculptor, you begin to build something rare, a soul that doesn't shatter, a spirit that doesn't break. That's when the world takes notice. Because while others are paralyzed by chaos, you learn to move inside it. While they shrink into conformity, you rise into sovereignty. But let this be clear. This metamorphosis demands a ruthless honesty, a severing from all the lies you've been told about what it means to be strong. Being strong doesn't mean being numb. It doesn't mean smiling through the storm with a broken heart. It means standing in the storm, feeling every gust, and refusing to bow. But nature doesn't hand you this strength freely. Chaos is only the catalyst. What truly saves you is your center, your inner gravity. Without it, chaos can devour you. And this is where Jung departs from mere analysis and asks something far greater of you. He asks you to carry what no one else can, to take back the power you once projected onto gods, systems, or saviors, to birth your own meaning in a world that offers none. Because when the sky no longer speaks, It is within you that the voice of the universe must begin to whisper. And if this resonates, if some part of you recognizes this path, then stay with it, because what comes next will not just test your mind, it will reshape your entire being. And once you cross this threshold, you will never return as the same person. What he destroyed was never God himself. What he shattered was the illusion that someone above is pulling the strings, that there's a plan already written, a purpose handed down, a safety net waiting to catch you when life collapses. No, what died was the comforting lie. The lie that your suffering has been pre-approved by some divine design. That somewhere, someone knows why. That if you endure long enough, it will all make sense. But nature doesn't offer comfort, it offers truth. And the truth is this: there is no script, no master plan, no one is coming. And that realization, that terrifying, liberating truth, is where everything begins. Because when the illusion dies, so does the excuse. The excuse to wait, to blame, to obey. You are left naked, facing the chaos alone. And in that moment, something extraordinary can happen. Most will collapse under the weight. They'll cling harder to systems, saviors, and symbols. They'll trade freedom for certainty, no matter how false. But a few will stand up, shaking, bleeding, unsure, but awake. And for those few, a different kind of mind begins to form. One that does not beg for meaning, but creates it. One that does not follow, but forges. One that does not fear the abyss, because it has already walked through it. The death of God is not just the collapse of old beliefs. It is the birth of radical responsibility. No commandments, no maps, only the raw material of existence and your will to shape it. This is brutal autonomy. You are the sculptor now, and the marble is your life. Yes, it is heavy. Yes, it is terrifying. But it is also power in its purest form. Because when you finally realize, truly realize, that no one will rescue you, a fire ignites inside. Not one of despair, but of creation. You begin to think not because you're told, but because you must. You act not because it's expected, but because you choose. And it is in this sacred rupture, this existential solitude, that nature prepares you for something greater than survival. The emergence of a new kind of being, a human that no longer asks for permission, that no longer seeks validation, a human who lives by values they themselves have created, a soul that does not bow, but builds. This kind of being terrifies the world because it holds up a mirror and reflects not who others pretend to be, but what they truly are. This being has a name. Nietzsche called him the Übermensch, the Overman. And if your goal is to forge a mind that cannot be broken, a soul immune to manipulation, then you must understand who this figure truly is. Not as a myth, but as a possibility. Because the Overman is not a fantasy. He is not a superhero. He has no cape, no mystical powers. What he possesses is far more rare: total inner freedom. Nietzsche did not believe that humanity would slowly stumble into greatness. He believed in rupture, in violent transformation, in creative destruction. The Übermensch is the result of that destruction. He is what emerges after everything weak in you dies. Guilt, blind obedience, the need to be liked, the craving to fit in, gone. This being does not follow. He does not ask to be accepted. He does not beg to be understood. He does not wait for approval to become himself. He creates his own commandments. He lives by an inner law. And if that means he stands alone against the entire world, so be it. That is why his mind is unbreakable, because it is not built on the shaky foundation of other people's opinions. It does not rise and fall with applause. It is forged in solitude, fueled by the raw, unfiltered will to power, the primal urge to shape reality in his own image. This is the essence. The Übermensch does not adapt to the world. He redefines the world. He does not ask, "Is this allowed?" He asks, "Is this worthy of me?" And once you make that shift, from servant to creator, everything begins to change. How you walk, how you speak, how you choose. But here's the truth most avoid. To become this kind of being, you must sacrifice. You must let die every part of yourself still begging for approval. You must face the pain of not belonging, of walking alone. You must build an identity from scratch, without validation, without guarantees, without applause. And most people, they can't do it. They quit before the first step. They run back to the comfort of ready-made rules, to belief systems that were handed to them, to identities stitched together by others. But the path to the Übermensch is not for the crowd. It is narrow. It is lonely. And Nietzsche knew this. He lived it, misunderstood, labeled insane, exiled by the very world he tried to awaken. But it is from this exile that the truth was born. You were not made to follow. You were made to create. And if you have the courage to walk that path, to face yourself without flinching, then maybe, just maybe, you'll become more than a reflection of the world around you. You'll become the force that shapes it. But it was in that isolation that he found his freedom. And this is what you must understand. The stronger your mind becomes, the further you drift from the masses. The higher you rise, the more you disturb. The creation of the Übermensch is not a poetic metaphor. It is a brutal metamorphosis. It demands that you destroy everything that was never yours to begin with. The opinions, the labels, the values you were taught to hold but never dared to question. Society feeds you obedience and punishes authenticity. It celebrates conformity, not strength. And so, to build yourself, you must first unbuild. Tear down the false idols, shatter the illusions, abandon the comfortable lies you were raised to believe. Only then can construction begin. But not in the noise of the crowd. It begins in silence, in solitude, in the kind of inner withdrawal that separates the strong from the weak, the awake from the asleep. That is why in the next chapter, we will confront what may be the most neglected and yet most essential truth of this journey, the solitude of the strong. Because the truth is this: to become unshakable, you must learn to walk alone. And very few are ready for that. The world doesn't tell you this. They sell strength as popularity, as applause, as having influence. But real strength, real inner power, it alienates. Because when your mind is no longer enslaved by the herd no longer recognizes you. You become a mirror that reflects their fear, their stagnation, their dependence. And they pull away. Not because you've changed, but because you've become something they're not ready to face. Nietzsche saw this with clarity. The free spirit, the one who questions inherited truths, who shatters common morality, will inevitably find themselves alone. But that pain of separation is necessary, because growth requires space, and you cannot grow while clinging to the expectations of others. Most people are trapped in an invisible herd, their thoughts monitored, their actions edited, their truth softened to avoid offense. They walk in groups, think like groups, feel safe in the group. But nature demands something else. She tears you from the comfort of the crowd and throws you into the desert. And in that desert, there is no applause, no praise, no guide. There is only you, your doubts, your traumas, your fears, your urge to surrender. And this is where the real test begins. Not in the moment you feel strong, but in the moment you feel like breaking and don't. Because what do most people do when they feel the weight of truth? They run. They run back into the comfort of illusion. They slip their masks on again, pretending not to feel, not to think, not to see. They choose the safety of unconsciousness over the pain of awakening. But if you truly want to become someone that no one can break, you cannot run. You must stay. You must endure the silence that strips away everything false and reveals the raw truth of who you are. Nietzsche warned us, the individual must always struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. He knew, if you try to stand alone, you will feel lonely, you will feel afraid. But no price is too high for the possession of your own soul. That is the essence, to possess yourself, to know that no one owns you, no one defines you, and no one can reduce your worth. But this possession, this rare and holy sovereignty, comes at a cost. You will lose people. You will be misunderstood. You will be called arrogant, cold, detached. They will say you've changed. They will say you've become hard. But the truth is, you've simply stopped needing permission to exist. And that disturbs them, because they still do. They will try to pull you back into the mold, back into the role they feel safe with. They will call you names, project their fears onto your clarity, confuse your independence for cruelty. But that is the price of not being domesticated, the price of not being a mirror for everyone else's needs. Here is the raw, unfiltered truth. If you cannot stand loneliness, you are not ready for freedom. Because all real freedom, all of it, comes with abandonment. The abandonment of emotional crutches, of comforting lies, of utilitarian relationships that only exist to make you feel safe, but never whole. This is why Nietzsche saw solitude not as punishment, but as a privilege, a battlefield where the true self finally has room to emerge. And when that self emerges, it doesn't just walk alone. It sees. It perceives the world with different eyes. And that vision comes with its own burden. The confrontation with mediocrity. Because when you begin to rise, when your presence radiates clarity, those trapped in the fog of comfort will feel it, and they will react. This is what we must face next. The hidden enemy of the strong, collective mediocrity. Because the world does not persecute those who are the same. It hunts those who stand out. Nietzsche did not tremble before tyrants or oppressive leaders. What he feared, what he raged against, was something far more subtle, far more dangerous. The quiet tyranny of the average. That invisible system that levels everyone down, that punishes the thinker and exalts the obedient. A system that disguises cowardice as moral virtue and obedience as goodness. True tyranny, Nietzsche said, doesn't come from above. It rises from below. It grows in silence. It thrives in conformity. And it crushes greatness not with force, but with shame. It doesn't strike from above. It creeps in from the sides, from the crowd that chants in unison, "Stay small so we don't have to grow." And that's exactly what begins when you start to rise. When your thoughts sharpen, your presence deepens. Your voice no longer trembles. You disturb, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've done something rare. You broke the mold. And society has always feared those who break molds. Collective mediocrity cannot coexist with individual brilliance. Because brilliance exposes the dim light in which most lives are lived. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He called it slave morality, a system built by those who could not reach greatness, so they redefined it. They renamed strength, arrogance. They labeled ambition, selfish. They called independence cold. And in doing so, they built a morality not to elevate, but to protect. Not out of compassion, but from resentment. Because the weak, deep down, do not want to be saved. They want the strong to fall. That is why the moment you begin to liberate yourself, they come for you. Sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, sometimes with a smirk or an eye roll meant to shrink you, but always with the same message. Go back to the group. You're making us feel small, and you are, simply by existing as you are. Because most people live in quiet cages, crafted from fear, guilt, and blind obedience. And when you question that, when you live outside it, you become a threat. But remember this, mediocrity does not fight with violence. It fights with consensus, with repetition, with shame. It whispers through every headline, every stare, every silence in the room. You are the problem for being different. And this is where many collapse. They can't bear being the outlier, the cold one, the arrogant one. But Nietzsche would call you something else, necessary. Because while the world turns in circles around recycled ideas, hand-me-down desires, and hollow truths, you, with your difference, your discomfort, your refusal to kneel, become the spark for something new to be born. But know this, that spark is also the target. To think freely, to live without asking for approval, to speak without bending. This is not just rebellion. It is war, a war against the invisible empire of mediocrity. And like all wars, you must prepare. Not with fists, not with weapons of steel, but with the strongest arsenal there is, the mind. And this is exactly where we arrive now, the final threshold. Because forging a mind so strong that it becomes feared comes with a cost, but it also comes with a reward no one can steal. This final part is not about inspiration. It's about truth, a truth few are willing to face. The fact that you've made it here says everything. Most would have turned away by now. They would have clicked off the moment it stopped feeding their ego. The second it began to feel like a confrontation instead of comfort. Because this isn't entertainment. This is a call to those who are done with illusions, with softness, with the slow death of comfort. Building a mind that cannot be broken is not just a decision, it's a sacrifice. You will lose. You will lose friendships held together by masks. You will lose opportunities that require your silence. You will lose the ability to tolerate anything less than truth. But what you gain is beyond price. You gain integrity. You gain clarity. You gain presence so undeniable that your silence will speak louder than the noise of the crowd. You will begin to see what others don't, that most people are asleep, that your lucidity makes them uneasy, that your firmness makes them retreat, that your absence feels heavier than their presence ever did. And this strength, it does not come from books. It does not come from mantras or gurus or five-step formulas. It comes from the dark, from the nights where your soul is the only one listening. It comes from the decisions you make when no one is watching, from the 1,000 quiet wars between who you were and who you are becoming. And that war never ends. Because the truly strong are not the ones who win once and rest. They are the ones who keep fighting long after they've earned the right to stop. Nature did not design you to follow. He designed you to shake, to provoke, to disturb, to stop crawling for approval, to stop begging for meaning, to stop searching in others what can only be forged within. This is not a message for the many, it is a mirror for the few. And if it reflected something inside you, then you already know. The path ahead will be ruthless, but it will be yours. He never wanted you to be tame. He wanted you to become dangerous, not with fists or fury, but with truth. Dangerous in the rarest way possible. So rare that your mere presence forces others to confront the lies they've wrapped their lives around. To see you is to see what they've refused to become. And now, I want to ask you to do something real. Something that marks the next step on this path. Write in the comments, a truth you're tired of hiding, an opinion you've been too afraid to speak, a thought that isolates you, but defines you. This is not a performance. It's a declaration. Claim your voice, not to impress, but to exist fully without apology. This is the work. This is the walk. To stand unbent, even in silence. And if something in this message hit deeper than the surface, if something inside you shifted, then don't stop here. The next video continues what was started. It may even take you further. Because if you've made it to this point, you're not here by accident. You're not watching because you're curious. You're watching because you're changing. So don't turn back. Keep walking. You are not alone. You're just ahead. And that, yes, is terrifying. But it's also the beginning of liberation.